Welcome to this week's Rider Support.
This week we're going to talk about that evil word cycling influencers, when you should use erg mode, but first a mistake that 90% of cyclists seem to be making, and we're going to get started right there. Hello, Sarah.
Anthony, how are you? Okay, let's crack on. Hi, Anthony and Sarah. I've accepted that no amount of sweet spot intervals or skipped desserts will turn me into Pogacar, so I'm going for marginal gains elsewhere. If I want to buy speed, where should I start? Aero wheels, wax chain, oversized pulleys. What actually moves the needle? And what's just expensive snake oil for weight weenies? And that's from Tyler Bennett. I had to look up what a weight weenie is. Apparently, do you know what this is?
It's actually, it's such a cool term. There's a cycling forum. I'm not sure if it's still on the go, but Weight Weenies used to be a cycling forum, like a Reddit for cycling nerds.
I had to put it into ChatGPT to figure out what a weight weenie is. So it is just for somebody who's obsessed with getting their bike really light.
Yeah, it's marginal gains.
Marginal gains, yeah. Okay. But anyway, let's get on to Tyler's question.
Yeah, it's hard to know if he's a time trialist. There's some fast gains you can make with maybe wheels, tires. Oversized pulleys are really cool, but they don't move the needle that much. The same with wax chains a little bit. Aero socks is a pretty good one. And recently a conversation I had with Ineos and former British cycling physio Phil Burt kind of cemented not even a marginal gain, quite a big gain in my mind. And it's going from like 95% of riders that I see are using either 172 or 175 cranks. And research is suggesting that a move to 160 mil cranks could give you like 15 plus watts on your FTP, which is absolutely astronomical. When we look at some of the other gains, which really are marginal, this isn't a marginal gain. So we're talking about a reduction in crank length. So I've actually gone and I've bit the bullet completely, and I'm moving my crank length from 172 to 160. Haven't installed them yet. There's my SRAM red cranks.
You want those 15 watts? Bad.
I need those 15 watts. Not that I want them. So for anyone that doesn't know what I'm talking about, the crank is measured from centre to centre, and it's 160 mil. Your current crank is probably 170 to 175 mil. Now I'll try and put that down without wrecking the desk. So it's a shorter crank. Now, there's a couple of reasons that Phil Burt gave me as to why people are moving to it. The main change seems to be centered around the change in your hip angle when you go shorter. The thing is, when you go shorter, it means you need to increase your saddle height. So if I'm going from 172 to 160, that offset, what's that? My maths is so bad.
You're just drawing a blank there.
So 12 mil, the saddle needs to go up 12 mil, and then it needs to also go forward as well. And that gives you the change in hip angle, which means you can push back a little bit further. But also research seems to suggest that there's secondary benefits in pedaling efficiency, reducing joint stress, and allowing for better aerodynamics.
When that podcast went out, and I can link it in the show notes, it was really interesting to look at the comments underneath on YouTube, because some people were saying, of course, you're always going to have your skeptics that say this is another gimmick, this doesn't work. But overridingly, a lot of people came on to say that, yes, they have found a huge difference in comfort and power when they shorten their crank. So it's not just, look, if Pogacar is doing it, apparently Jonas Vingegaard is now moving to shorter cranks if he hasn't already. I did see an article during the week where apparently they had filed off all the information on the crank and kind of repainted it, so no one would know exactly what he's using. That's Vingegaard. So there has to be a method behind this madness. If the pros are doing it, it must work.
Well, Phil Burt had the data on at British Cycling, what the track guys, how much power it was changing for them. I think I might have said 160. It's 165. Yeah. I'm moving to. It was a little slip. But I found a study on Road Bike Reaction, or at least a study they reference, on aerodynamics, because I was surprised at the aerodynamic gain. Now, this is dating back to Bradley Wiggins' time, but it said aerodynamics may be the reason for shorter cranks. A 2.5 mil reduction in shorter cranks improved aerodynamics by optimizing hip angle and dropping your front end closer to the front of the bike. Bradley Wiggins went from 177 to 170 at the time, which dropped his front end by 30 mil and improved his total aerodynamic profile by 3.5%. Huge.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Now, a word of caution, you do need to change. You can't just bang on the new cranks without upping your saddle or moving it forward. That conversation with Phil Burt kind of gives you a little bit of a how-to guide on fixing your bike setup for it. But as always, I think getting into a professional bike fitter is a good idea.
What I'm interested in as well is the cadence, because again, cadence is something that I struggle with a little bit. You know, I've been working on my cadence. Anyone who's listened to the show for a long time knows that when I started my cycling journey a couple of years ago, my average cadence was about 70. Now I'm kind of up in the 80s, and I'm just wondering, because the crank is shorter, I'm going to be doing more cadence per minute.
You're good at maths, you could figure this out. Someone will know this in the comments, how you calculate.
Yeah.
If you normally go out at an 80 cadence for 3 hours and you make no other change, everything else is kept equal, what effect would it have going from a 172 to a 165 crank?
Yeah, I'd be really interested to hear that, because a higher cadence, I think, is better, feels better. I know I struggle with it, but I think it just gives you more comfort. It gives you more, you know, push
at
on
a
the
point
bike.
when you're at 70, but I don't know I've never seen data to say once you're over 80 that a higher cadence is better.
Your cadence is quite high. I know that a few months ago we were out together, and I basically connected to your power meter, and your average cadence was like 94 or something.
Spinners
I was like,
are winners.
Spinners are winners. I'm a grinder. Okay, next question. Anthony, when a group ride has a set start time, how long should you wait for latecomers? Is it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or wheels down exactly at the start time? This is something that has caused a few rows in our group, and that's from Nigel.
It's wheels down at exactly the start. Like Sean Lally, who I referenced in the group or in the podcast a lot, he's like the most senior member of our group in his late 80s, a legend of Irish cycling. I remember him saying to me, the group doesn't meet at 9:30, the group leaves at 9:30.
Yeah.
I think it's
a lovely turn of, it's a good turn of phrase for it.
It's okay. So I need to preface this. I'm a big fan of being on time for stuff, and of also not tolerating people disrespecting your time. Like if you go to meet someone at 9:30 and they show up at 9:45, what they've really said there is that 15 minutes, their time is more important than your time. They're happy to let you sit there twiddling your thumbs because they're doing something more important than you're doing. So it's a real slight straight away. And I think you teach people how to treat you. Like Roy Keane and Ian Wright had a viral clip where Righty was saying he was 2 minutes late for lunch with Keano, and Keano was gone. He's like, I'm not coming, Righty, you're late. And I think you teach people how to treat you. And if you keep letting people come to a group ride late, they're going to keep coming later and later. Now, that said, we have a weird kind of setup where we have multiple meeting points on our group ride. So we often do leave 3-4 minutes late. But if you are coming on the group ride and you arrive at 9:31, don't be surprised if it's gone.
If we're gone. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think we have gone a little bit lax when it comes to that. If somebody is coming to the group ride and they're a regular within the group and they text to say, I'm running 5 minutes late, do you have a little bit of wiggle room?
It cracks me if someone texts at like, the group meets at 9:30 and someone will put in a text at 8:10 going, I'm running 5 minutes late. It's like, how do you know you're running 5 minutes late?
No, I know that actually happened last weekend. I know somebody put it into the group.
Just don't have another coffee.
You were like, they've literally have an hour to get here. But I think that was somebody coming from the
They have their meditation, they have their green tea, they have their yoga practice, and they're not willing to.
In fairness, I think that
short.
person was coming from the complete opposite side of the city. So a little bit of wiggle room for that person there.
Ridiculous.
But Nigel, yeah, I think that you need to just set a rule to say that you're leaving at exactly the start time, and there's no room for error around that. I think it's a good way to run your group. Okay, next question. I've been using erg mode on my indoor trainer for structured workouts, but I'm wondering if it's actually the best way to train. Sometimes it feels like it's forcing me into a grind, and I'm not sure if I'm building strength or just suffering inefficiently. Should I stick with erg mode for intervals, or is there a case for switching it off and riding by feel. Let's go through what erg mode is first for people who don't know.
I think even rewinding from that, there's a big case for calling all indoor sessions erg sessions.
Erg, yeah.
Something 1980s Soviet bloc about, I'm getting up on the erg for a couple of hours. It just feels cool.
Yeah, it feels very old school. It feels like you're working hard.
Yeah, it's like you're in the
so
shed,
front. You're so
pre-Rouvy Strava, and you're reading like the label off the can of tin of paint, trying to pass the time in a freezing cold shed with dimly lit.
Love it. You've got the towel around your neck and you're in the old cotton sweats. You don't even have a chamois on. I love as well that he says structured workouts. We don't call them structured workouts. We call them sessions when you're a cyclist. Anyway, go through erg, Anthony, for this listener.
Erg mode on indoor trainer, it is great for structured workouts for like a trainer road or a Rouvy pre-plan where you're jumping on and you're just going boom, boom, boom through their blocks. You know, you have your FTP set and now you get on and it'll just bring you to your 5 minutes at 80%, 10 minutes at 70%, and it'll back down to your zone 2, and it does all the changes for you. So you have to think about very little.
But can we explain really quickly what erg is? Because I know there's a lot. I know you're kind of saying that it will bring you up and down through your zones. But erg essentially, are you going to go through this?
Yeah.
Oh, you are.
No,
sorry.
you can go if you want.
No, basically it's if you need to be riding at 200 watts, the erg function on your indoor trainer is going to keep you at 200 watts no matter what your cadence is.
Yeah, it'll keep you at that power output,
it'll keep you at the power
regardless
output.
of how slow or fast you pedal.
Exactly. So you... Yeah.
But I think even that, like, it doesn't just keep you at 200 watts. It'll keep you on your structured plan.
Yes, it will. Yeah. But it does have its kind of downfalls as well, right? Because you do encourage me not to ride erg a lot of the time.
Well, upside of it first before we get into the downside of it, I think that precision, it helps you hit specific power targets, which are key for developing, for like building your strength, building your endurance, especially at those higher intensity intervals where people struggle to hold the wattage. Or if you haven't used wattage before, it jumps around a lot. It's not like heart rate, where heart rate has a built-in lag. And even if you sprint, heart rate takes quite a while to catch up with it. If you haven't used power before, it's quite dynamic. It jumps around all over the place, especially if you don't have your average power set to like 2 seconds or 3 seconds. So it bounces around a bit. So if you have like an interval that calls for 5 minutes at 90% of your max power, erg mode's going to help you stay on track and hold exactly 90% of your power for that 5 minute interval. So it's going to make it easier to track progress and to challenge yourself kind of consistently. Now, the downside of it is if your cadence slows down too much, erg will still hold you at the same power, but the torque requirement really goes up.
Oh, that's the bit that gets me. Unless you can keep your cadence up, you are going to be in a world of pain, stomping on the pedals, trying to get your cranks around. That's hell when that happens.
Yeah, well, it's just not very real either. So at that point where the cadence gets, if you drop anything below 80, I don't feel like you're getting the normal benefit you should from that session, because it's turned into something else. It's turned into a strengthy. It's turned into a different type of session.
And also for people who've never used erg before, it means that you don't really have control over your gear. So even if you are going up and down the block or trying to get into an easier or hard gear, you really don't have any control over that. So erg is deciding which gear that you're in at all times.
Well,
so
your cadence decides that.
Your cadence does. So if you find yourself, like I have done a million times, and my cadence is dropping. I'm on a cadence of like 40 and I'm really struggling to hit the power numbers, and my cadence is going lower and lower. There's no way out.
There's no point in going up the block. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. I can't physically put it into an easier gear either. So it's...
No, because you're like... What you would do is you're put it into an easier gear, but when you say easier gear, what you're looking to do is reduce the power.
Yes.
So you're not looking for an easier gear. You're looking for to put out less power. Well, so it won't let you put out less power.
Well, I'm looking to increase my cadence, so it
but
feels
you could
easier.
just increase your cadence.
Yeah, but
that's not about going up the block.
Yeah, but that's very, very difficult when when it's staying at this particular power and I don't have it in my legs to increase.
Yeah, but that's my exact point. You want to go up the block to increase your cadence, but what you actually are doing there is you're increasing your cadence and decreasing your power. Like if you want to increase your cadence and stay on the same power, you need to just spin up that gear you're in. So that's why it's very challenging to do once it gets on top of you.
Yeah.
Why I don't massively love it is If you see like this year, Remco broke his power meter by backpedaling on the start gate of the World TT Champs.
Oh no, I didn't.
So he had no power meter, but he was still able to execute his effort within 2 or 3 watts of his target pace, because he knows what, like his probably 450, his target wattage around that. He knows what that feels like because he's put out efforts so often. I think you lose the feel of the pedals on erg mode. Like if you ask me to ride at 350 watts, I know what that feels like. I know what 220 watts feels like because I've thousands of hours of repetition of riding at those intensities. I feel like you lose that and you lose a touch of that. And that, I don't think, is a brilliant thing when you get into race scenarios. So yeah, I don't know. I like the idea of being able to manipulate cadence as the effort goes on through the gearing rather than just spinning it up like we talked about. I'm not a huge fan of erg mode for intervals. I really like erg mode for long endurance rides indoors where you can just flick on Netflix, don't focus on your Rouvy screen at all, and just ride along at 220 watts for 3-4 hours.
Yeah, totally agree. Absolutely agree with you. Okay.
Roadman, I'm going to date myself here, but I've been riding the bike for almost 20 years. And in that time, I've cycled through every cycling apparel brand out there. And I kept swapping out different apparel brands each season until I found Le Col. There's something really different about Le Col, and as soon as you slip into the gear, you notice it feels different. It feels better. I've had the pleasure of chatting with Yanto Barker on the podcast. He's the Le Col founder, and his dedication to crafting the fastest, most refined cycling apparel out there, it's nothing short of inspiring. Yanto isn't just trying to create gear. I get the feeling he's actively and obsessively trying to perfect cycling gear. Trust me, as soon as you slip on the Le Col kit, as soon as you zip up that jersey, you can feel that commitment. The proof for Le Col, it's in the pudding. This is the same kit that Jay Hindley wore when he clinched overall victory in the Giro d'Italia. There's a confidence that comes with wearing apparel that's been battle tested and podium proven in races like the Giro d'Italia. Trust me, feeling good on the bike means you're gonna perform better. If you have a second, I highly advise you to jump on over to lacol.cc and check out their amazing range of kit and experience this feeling for yourself.
Next question. Anthony, I've been hearing a lot about smart cranks and pedals that measure more than just power. Things like pedal smoothness, torque effectiveness, and even left-right balance. Are these extra metrics actually useful for improving performance, or is it just information overload for most riders? This is interesting, isn't it? Because the Watt bike in particular will give you all of this information. It was something that is, anyone who rides one of those will see that peanut on the screen in front of you that gives you all of this exact information this listener is talking about. Is it useful?
I haven't been hearing a lot about smart cranks and pedals. Is there particular brands does he mention that he's talking about?
No, this is the only, again, exposure I've had to it is that peanut on the Watt bike that has given me this info.
Favreau Asimo pedals, absolute junk, like ball of dirt. They've had so many problems with them. The bearings go, the accuracy's terrible. They stop reading. They've just been absolutely brutal. Definitely wouldn't recommend them, but they give you some of the data that he's talking about there. Some of the stuff he's talking about, again, most of my experience on this is based, like you, from riding the Watt bike for quite a few years. The pedal smoothness, this metric is going to show you how evenly you're applying force throughout the pedal stroke. So it's especially useful for riders who are looking to fine-tune their technique or work on areas like improving the top or the bottom of the pedal stroke. The other one is torque effectiveness. This measures how effectively you're turning the pedals in terms of force application around the 360 degrees. So it's going to help you identify if you're over-relying on certain parts of the pedal stroke, like you're pushing down too hard or you're pulling up too hard. So you can optimize that cycling mechanics. So the kind of story I heard is like, you're meant to pedal like you have shit on the bottom of your shoe and you're trying to scrape it off the edge of a curb and you're trying to get rid of it. So it's like smooth all the way around.
Yeah, because you do see a lot of people, you can kind of tell that some people have a pedal stroke where they're very much relying on the downward part of the pedal stroke rather than, and not really using any muscle to pull on the back part of it, the up part. So probably do that myself.
And then the other one's the left-right balance, and that metric highlights if you have an imbalance from one leg to the other. Collectively, smoothness, torque effectiveness, left-right balance, I'm going to say they're a load of nonsense. I've never looked at that stupid peanut on the watt bike and made any, like, if you focus on it for a couple of minutes, you can change the shape of it, but
Yeah,
it's just all seems like nonsense. There's much easier gains to be made.
it takes a lot of effort to.
Well, like, what are you going to do? So you have a 43-57 left-right balance. What are you going to do? Do like 100 hours of one-legged pedaling to correct that imbalance, or start doing more stuff in the gym? Unless you have an injury, which you should be working with a physio to correct that imbalance, because that's not just going to be a leg imbalance. That's going to be postural all the way up your chain, where you need to correct more than just leg strength. I think it's maybe indicative and shows you that you have an underlying weakness, which you should then go and work with a professional to address. But the idea of that you can address it by doing one-legged drills, the amount of repetition you would need to correct an imbalance is just so huge. And then everyone has a small bit of an imbalance, like riding a 48-52, 49-51. That's absolutely everyone, and there's nothing really wrong with that. So I think it's a load of shit. I'll throw it in the bin.
I put a picture up of when I was doing a session one day on Twitter of the peanut and kind of where I was with it, and a load of people commented about the pressure was wrong, the balance was wrong. It's something that people, if you have that information, do seem to kind of like. But yeah, I think it's very much overkill, but that's just my opinion. Okay, next question. Hi both, loving the podcast. I've 2 questions. Firstly, I keep finding myself consciously unclipping, or is it unconsciously unclipping? Either way, when I'm coming up to a bend or a part of the road I know I might have to brake or change direction suddenly, I unclip one pedal. It's probably a defensive thing, but is it something everyone does? I'm relatively new to group riding and I haven't noticed it out on the rides, but I was out today for a spin on my own and I was very aware that I was doing it. I know the roads I ride very well. I drove them too to get a good sense of the riskiest sections with low visibility, blind hills, corners, etc. So really I should have more confidence when I'm cornering. Maybe it's not even an issue, especially as I'm not doing anything super serious with my cycling. I just love to be out and about on the bike. I don't have a bike computer anymore, which for what I'm doing makes it more fun.
I've actually have seen this before. There's one lad who I rode with years ago who used to unclip coming up to junctions or down the side of, sometimes there's a row of cars stop the traffic lights and you're kind of filtering up the left or right side depending on the country you're in, and you've one foot near the sidewalk, he'd clip out that foot closest to the sidewalk in case he had to balance. It seems like it's a very conscious thing where he's like, is it conscious or unconscious? It's a bad habit, like, because a lot of it's based on the idea that it's safer to do this, but I would argue it's way unsafer to do this, which if you're maybe he's unconsciously doing it, but if he's consciously doing it, the conscious thought process, stick with me on this one, the conscious thought process is, this is a safer thing to do and it gives me more options if stuff goes wrong because I can put a foot down. But I think the reality is it's way unsafer to do because you're losing a lot of control of your bike. When you only have one foot clipped into the pedals, you're really limiting how you can maneuver your bike. So if you're coming around a corner with one foot out, unless you're cyclocross style and you're worried you're going to have a front wheel slip out or gravel, I thought you had to go around some of the gravel corners.
But they're like super tight hairpin kind of stuff.
You're almost expecting a front wheel slide out because the surface is so bad. So you're looking, can you take your inside foot out so you can do a little toe touch, that when you do have the front wheel slip, you can do a toe touch to keep it up going around the corner. But that's not what he's talking about here. If you need to do toe touches going around a road corner, like, you've got that line badly wrong and you're way too aggressive into the corner. I would say practice more, like, graded adaptation, push your comfort zone and practice staying clipped in more often than you currently are, because it's going to be much safer and it's going to give you much more options to pull the front wheel up onto a curb, to get out of trouble, to swerve, to brake faster. It's also just really dangerous in general because now you're unpredictable. And if I'm riding behind you, I don't really know what you're going to do. And unpredictability is just not a valued trait in group rides.
Totally agree. And I was out last week and caught up on a couple of guys who were in a group in front of me. One, as we were coming up to junctions, a few of them were clipping out really early. Now I'm talking like 150 meters before a junction, not knowing what was at the junction, if they could roll through, if they could just maybe do a momentarily do a track stand, maybe, something like that, but clipping out so early and on rough surfaces, going through potholes with one foot completely clipped out, which I get when you're a learner, because when you're clipped in first, your big fear is you're going to get to that crossroads. You're going to have to jam on the brakes. You're not going to be clipped out. You're going to topple out or whatever. So I do understand that. And I think your point about adapting slowly, pushing your comfort levels, if you do feel like you're clipping out 150 meters from the traffic light, try and get that to 140 this week, and then slowly. But you don't agree with clipping out. Sometimes if I'm filtering up through traffic and it's very tight to the curb, I will also filter through with my left foot clipped out, kind of just so I can, if it's super narrow and I need to touch my foot off the pavement. Yeah,
look, there's an argument for that, but it also removes your ability then to pop your front wheel onto the curb if you need to get out of trouble. So if you need to get out of big trouble, your big out is you're going onto the curb. Hopefully you don't have to do it. There could be pedestrians there and stuff. But if you've your foot clipped out, you've totally removed that possibility of getting onto the curb. I think if it's narrow enough down the side of traffic that you need to clip out to kind of toe touch and kind of push your way down, it's probably just too narrow to go down. You shouldn't have just gone down that gap.
The only other time that I would clip out, I actually don't even really like doing it, and we've done this a few times in the last few weeks, is there's been a huge puddle on one of the roads that we go through, and in order to keep your shoes dry and your white socks white, you unclip both of your feet and kind of lift your feet up as you're going through the puddle, whereas like I don't feel like I've any control over the bike. Yeah, so I'm like, do you know what? Screw the socks.
And I nearly got you a track stand mid puddle as well.
You screwed me. So I was on his wheel and he came to an almost complete stop. So I had to put my foot down in about 18 inches of water. Thank you very much for that, sweetheart.
What's the second part of this question?
Okay, secondly, on a lighter note, one of my usual roads today was closed for roadworks and I ended up taking a detour and found a brilliant quiet road as an alternative. I'm going to go that way more often now, but I wouldn't have found it without the detour. Are there any times that this has happened to either of you and you stumbled upon somewhere really nice? And that question, thank you, Daniel, for writing in.
Yeah, I try to do that all the time, where I always go down. I get lost a lot on spins. They're not lost because I know where I am, but at the roads where, I've never been down this road before. I wonder what's down the end of this. I wonder what's the end of this lane. That's how I kind of got into riding gravel before gravel bikes were even a thing. I'd get to the top of a climb, but then there'd be a forest trail at the top of the climb. Be like, I wonder how far I could ride down this on the road bike. And you kind of push that. That's been always the most fun thing since I've been a kid on the bike for me, is exploring new roads and trails. And
I think for a newbie cyclist like me, it's more difficult because your confidence level in your fitness, if something goes wrong, if you get a puncture, if you have a mechanical, I'm a real creature of habit for those reasons. If anyone checks out my Strava, you'll notice that I have kind of the same 4 or 5 roads that I feel very safe going on.
That's good for the attackers.
It's good for
easy to pin down your schedule.
They'd have to catch me. But yeah, so I wish that's why I love gravel as well. It feels like a bit more of an adventure, but I think I'm going to take kind of a little bit of inspiration from you, Daniel, and try and go a little bit outside of our routes. We do have one guy on our in our group spin, Mick, and every time Mick is out, he just wants to go adventuring. He wants to take the most random ways out. He absolutely, and it's actually a really good skill as well, because if you're in a headwind, you can take a little kind of more sheltered route. Like, it's a brilliant skill to have. So yeah, something I'm going to try and do more of.
Transform your indoor cycling with Rouvy, the platform that brings real-world routes and augmented reality to your training. Whether you're preparing for a big event or you're just looking to explore, Rouvy lets you experience legendary rides like Alpe d'Huez and Passo de Stelvio from the comfort of your home. Rouvy's unique augmented reality technology uses real-life video and GPS data to create the most realistic cycling experience available. You'll feel every climb, descent and turn with precise terrain replication, giving you an authentic outdoor ride indoors. Plus, with AR elements like avatars and banners, the ride really feels totally immersive and interactive. With over 1,500 routes and 25,000 kilometers, the world's most iconic cycling destinations, Rouvy is perfect for cyclists of all levels. Whether you want to enjoy scenic routes, participate in group rides, or push your limits with advanced training plans, Rouvy has you covered. Rouvy also offers flexible pricing, allowing you to pause your subscription or choose duo or group plans to share the experience. From exploring new places to serious training, Rouvy has something for every cyclist. Ready to ride the world? Visit rouvy.com and start your journey today.
Okay, next question. Hi, Anthony and Sarah. I feel like I already know the answer to this question, but stopping for photos on a social ride. I love grabbing a quick picture for the Instagram when the scenery is epic, but I worry about holding everyone up. Is it fine as long as you don't lose the group, or should you save it for solo rides? And that's from Sunny.
It's the Instagram influencer question, isn't it? Yeah. I don't have a huge problem with anyone taking photos unless they're holding, no one's waiting for you. So you're not holding the group up. If you stop for a photo, good luck. The group's not waiting for you. Like if they see you're stopping for a photo, if you're stopping for a pee or you're stopping for a mechanical, the group's going to wait. If you're stopping for a photo, you need some patient group now to be waiting for you. So
this was happening actually. I won't name the person. About 2 summers ago, we had somebody join and came for a couple of weeks, and they were taking photos of, you know, like the Kyo's crisp factory, you know, literally anything that they came across, they were stopped and taking a picture. The problem was that this person used to be a very good racer back in the day. So we were all kind of a little bit afraid to kind of say, okay, let's keep moving along here. This is a training ride. But I think it's a little bit rude to stop, and
if you're not holding anyone
this
up, it's
person
fine.
isn't expecting anybody else to stop with them. But I think if, for instance, right, you stop and taking photos. Me as somebody who is leading a group, let's say I'm leading the slow group, I turn around and I'm like, okay, where's Anthony? Oh shit, I've lost a person. So next thing, there's a whole conversation about who's going to go back.
I think the etiquette has to be like the same as if you're stopping for a pee. So if I'm stopping for a pee, I'll normally tack off the front to get a gap and then pull in and have a pee. And then I'll be slightly behind the group and I'll catch up at the back of the group. I think if you're stopping, you're just saying like, I'm going up the road for a minute for a pee, and then you're taking a sly little photo. I don't know if you're telling anyone you're tacking off the front to take a photo. Yeah, no, I see your point. It is pretty annoying if you're
I think it's
an
really
organised group ride.
I think if you were in a group ride and someone's doing that, Anthony, you would not be impressed.
Well, it just wouldn't stop. Well, also, not everyone wants to be in your photo.
No,
like
that's very true.
You know, so I don't know. Like you need to.
Yeah, it's a no for me. I think taking, like, if you go onto my TikTok, if you go onto my X, if you go onto any of my social media, people are always like, do you not have any friends? Like, why is there never any people in your photos? And I'm like, well, if I'm out training with somebody, I'm not going to say to them, do you mind if we stop? I just want to take some pictures for my social.
I think if you do stop out training, like there is times to stop. You can stop at the top of a climb.
Yeah,
cafe. You can stop when it's regroup, and you can stop at the calf, start of the ride, end of the ride. There's plenty of opportunities to take photos on a ride if you want to include other people, assuming they want to be in your photo. Middle of the ride's just not the time for it.
Yeah, agreed.
Roadman, we have come to the ends of another rider support. Thanks for tuning in. There's another video up here which you should definitely check out if you have a little bit of time, and please subscribe to the channel and share this into your club WhatsApp group. Keep the questions coming in as well. You can hit Sarah up on X or on Instagram. Both are linked below, or contact form on our website. Until next time.